Night was slowly falling over the quiet neighborhood, illuminating the sidewalks with the amber glow of the streetlights, when the girl's fragile, yet firm, voice broke the silence like a bolt of lightning. "Sir, the boy you're looking for lives in my house." The phrase came out so unexpectedly, so raw, that it made the man stop breathing for a second. For 3 long years, he had carried on his shoulders the unbearable weight of searching for his missing son, facing failed investigations, false leads, sleepless nights, and a guilt that marked him like a permanent shadow. And now, in front of a simple poster attached to a lamppost, he heard from a stranger, a little girl of no more than 8 years old, the phrase that no father could ignore. His eyes widened, the structure of his face crumbled in a mixture of shock and hope, and inside, a storm of questions began to roar, like a voice screaming for answers. The girl, noticing his reaction, took a step forward, as if carrying a truth too heavy for her age, and added, "He lives there with me and my mother, ever since he appeared injured in the rain." Her words seemed to shatter everything he thought he knew about that disappearance. And in the next instant, before anyone could even breathe, that man's life began to crumble and be reborn at the same time. Before we delve into this amazing story, tell me which city and state you're watching from. Leave a comment and I'll reply with gratitude. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and like this video. We want to share more stories like this. The early afternoon seemed ordinary in the quiet neighborhood, where the aligned trees kept pace with the slow rhythm of families returning from work. But nothing on those streets suggested that a 3-year-old secret was about to be ripped from its silence. Millionaire Klaus Mendel walked distractedly, attentive only to the sound of his own footsteps and the persistent cold that marked the beginning of autumn. His impeccable blue suit contrasted with the tired expression he carried, an expression that didn't come from his body, but from his heart. He walked because he needed to. It was the only way to escape the guilt that had haunted him since the day his son, Daniel, disappeared at the age of 5. 3 years had passed with searches in cities, forests, abandoned houses, paid investigations, false leads, newspaper headlines, and an entire country wondering how a boy could disappear without a trace. And yet Klaus was still there, a broken father but unable to give up. When he saw yet another lamppost with the missing poster, his stomach churned. It wasn't just a photo, it was the last vivid image he had of his son before the world crumbled. He touched the paper with trembling fingers, as if the texture could bring him back to reality, and took a deep breath to contain the tightness in his chest. At that moment, while trying to hide the pain he carried in his weary blue eyes, he heard light footsteps behind him. He turned and found a girl of about 8 years old, black, with slightly messy curly hair, a simple red blouse, and blue eyes so intense they seemed to shine of their own accord. The girl observed the poster with profound seriousness, as if she understood something that no one else saw. Klaus smiled politely out of habit. He no longer had the strength for genuine sympathy. But before he could say anything, the girl raised her face with a mixture of fear and courage, and uttered the phrase that would shatter everything he thought he knew. "Sir, that boy in the photo lives in my house." In the first second, Klaus thought he'd misheard. In the second, he realized he hadn't, and in the third, he felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. The girl didn't back down. Her blue eyes, as improbable and intense as those on the poster, carried a truth that couldn't be contained in a child. Klaus took a step forward, struggling to keep his voice steady, but it escaped hoarse and fragile. "What do you mean, he lives in your house?" The girl held her wrist, a timid gesture, and answered with the calm of someone who had repeated that story many times, but never to someone who could truly change anything. "He appeared one rainy night, a long time ago. My mother found him injured near our door, all curled up, trembling. He hardly spoke. We took care of him, and he stayed. Klaus felt his heart race as if trying to escape his chest. Memories came flooding back in flashes, his son's favorite toy abandoned on the floor, the open door, the feeling that something terribly wrong had happened. Time rushing by as the police searched for clues that never materialized. "How long has he been with you?" he asked, even though he knew he dreaded the answer. The girl, now a little more hesitant, murmured, "I think since that time everyone talked about it on TV. 3 years. He's been living with me ever since." Klaus's breath hitched. He looked at the poster again, then at the girl, then back at the poster. The dates matched, the age matched, the description matched, the features could match if time, trauma, and distance had shaped the boy differently. But something shattered everything. Why was his son living anonymously in strangers' house? Why had no one ever looked for him? How had no one recognized him before? And why did the girl seem so sure and yet so sad when she said that? The little girl took a deep breath, as if carrying the weight of a revelation she had kept hidden for too long. Her blue eyes welled up, but she resisted the pain that seemed to pierce through her small frame. "I only spoke because he cries at night calling a name that I think is yours. He whispers, 'Daddy.'" The word pierced Klaus like an arrow. He staggered back, feeling the emotional impact hit harder than any physical blow. The girl immediately reacted, reaching out to support him, even though she was so small. The innocent, almost protective gesture only increased the chaos within him. He tried to speak, but his voice wouldn't come. He tried to breathe, but it felt like he was out of breath. And then, like a final burst of consciousness, trying to reorganize the world, he asked, "Where is your house?" The girl pointed to the end of the street, to a simple house with a small garden and toys scattered around the yard. A house he would never have suspected. "Is he there now?" Klaus whispered, as if the answer could break him completely. The girl nodded, and in that instant, as the cold wind blew the dry leaves across the sidewalk, the millionaire realized that his life was about to change forever. Because the secret, hidden for 3 years, was just a few steps away from him, alive, breathing, waiting, and bearing marks he didn't yet dare to imagine. The walk to the girl's house seemed endless, even though it was only a few meters. Each of Klaus's steps felt like a crushing weight against the ground, as if the world were suspended, watching him cross the border between despair and hope. The girl walked ahead, her steps small, firm, but clearly nervous. Her curly hair swayed in the wind, her red blouse contrasting with the impeccable blue of his suit, as if two completely different worlds were about to collide. Klaus noticed everything but couldn't react to anything. His mind alternated between images of the past and the possibility of seeing his son again just ahead. As they walked, the girl spoke carefully, as if fearing that every detail could hurt even more. "He doesn't talk much, you know. He's afraid of noises, afraid of doors slamming, and sometimes he wakes up screaming." Klaus felt his heart crushed by guilt. If it really was his son, then Daniel had spent 3 years trapped in traumas that he, as a father, should have protected him from. His breathing became irregular, his throat tightening against an emotion that was growing too fast to contain. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone?" he asked weakly, almost unsure of hearing the answer. The girl lowered her gaze, kicking a small stone in her path. "My mother said that if we told, they would take him away from us, and he liked being there. He seemed afraid of someone." Klaus stopped when he heard that. The fear, the silence, the escape. Nothing fit with his old life. Daniel had never shown fear of anyone, never run away from anything. So what had happened that day? Whose disappearance had been the work of? And why would his son be so terrified of revealing the truth? With each new piece of that puzzle, a deeper shadow formed in his mind. When they arrived at the small house, the girl stopped before the rusty gate and took a deep breath, as if she were about to open a door to another dimension. She looked at Klaus with such intense sincerity that it made the man shudder. "He's in the yard now, playing with my old teddy bear." Klaus's heart tightened. It had been 3 years since he had seen his son hold a toy. 3 years since he had only seen him in photos frozen in time. The girl opened the gate slowly, and the metallic creak seemed to echo in the millionaire's chest. The yard was simple: uneven grass, worn-out toys, some clothes on the clothesline. But there was something welcoming there, a feeling of real home, unlike anything the boy had experienced in cold, silent mansions. Klaus took a few hesitant steps until, around a bend in the garden, he saw him. The boy was sitting on the ground, blond, fair-skinned, head down as he slowly moved a broken toy car. Even from a distance, there was something painfully familiar about his posture, the way his shoulders slumped slightly forward, the way he pressed his lips together when concentrating. Klaus felt his legs give way. The world seemed to lose focus. For a moment, he simply stood there, breathing heavily, staring at the image he had prayed for 1,000 nights. The girl approached first, calling softly, "Hey, someone wants to see you." The little boy slowly lifted his face. His blue eyes, so alive and so frightened, met Klaus's like a silent lightning bolt. There was no scream, there was no smile, there was no immediate recognition. There was only a devastating silence, the kind of silence that reveals more than any word. Klaus fell to his knees, too weak to stand before that vision. "Daniel," he whispered, his voice broken by the pain and hope colliding within him. The boy's eyes widened, confused. His lips trembled, as if trying to form a word he didn't know if he could pronounce. The girl stood between the two, looking from one to the other, feeling the gravity of that moment which surpassed her childish understanding. Klaus, overcome with emotion, extended a trembling hand, but the boy recoiled, not out of rejection, but out of fear. A learned fear, a deep fear, a fear that betrayed that he had experienced something Klaus could never have imagined. The boy's recoil struck Klaus like a knife. He realized in that gesture everything he had truly lost. It wasn't just his son. It was time, memories, trust, innocence. And while still kneeling, fighting back tears that finally escaped his eyes, he heard heavy footsteps behind him. The door of the small house opened, and the girl's mother appeared in the doorway. Her expression froze at the sight of Klaus. Her eyes widened, her whole body stiffened. In a fraction of a second, he understood. She knew exactly who he was, and she also knew exactly who the boy was. The girl ran to her mother, holding her hand, but the woman didn't take her eyes off Klaus, as if she were facing a ghost, a sentence, an inescapable truth. Klaus stood up slowly, without aggression, without accusation, only with the weight of pain etched in his eyes. "He is my son," he said, his voice more broken than ever before. The woman took a deep breath, tears instantly welling up. "I know," she confessed. "I knew from day one." Klaus felt the ground disappear again. "Why?" he pleaded. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you give him back?" The woman brought her hand to her face, trembling. "Because when I found him, he didn't want to come back. He screamed, cried, trembled when I tried to ask his name. I did what I thought would protect him, even if it was wrong." Silence settled in like a storm. The girl hugged her mother around the waist. The boy watched everything with confused and frightened eyes, and Klaus felt his heart torn between anger, compassion, despair, and guilt that mingled like an impossible knot to untie. It was then that the girl, with all the innocence and strength that only deeply hurt children know how to carry, took the boy's hand and gently pulled him towards Klaus. "He said your name yesterday." "For the first time," she murmured. The boy, hesitant, took a step closer, and then another. His eyes trembled, his breathing quickened, until in a weak, almost imperceptible voice he whispered, "Dad." Klaus completely broke down. The hug that followed wasn't a reunion, it was a rebuilding. A hug that dissolved 3 years of darkness, 3 years of guilt, 3 years of fear. And there, in that simple backyard, surrounded by old toys and silent tears, the millionaire understood that his life hadn't been destroyed by the secret, but reborn through it. And if this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone you love. Click now to share it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the upcoming stories we're preparing with great care for you.